see who ends up popping on here. Doing this whole live stream thing. Who pops on first? Mule, what's up, Mule? How you doing? I got at least a little piece of round bar in the forge right now. Let's shift this over just a hair. I've only had the forge going for like 2 minutes so far, so it's not really that warm just yet, but I figured I'd go ahead and throw the wire in there. Basically what I'm working with tonight, I'll tell people as they hop on. I forged, what's up Maxilla? I forged some coil spring down into round bar. So basically, some of this coil spring right here. Had a guy, Whack-A-Mole Outdoor Adventures. What's up? What's up, Joseph? How you doing? So we're going to be forging. I've already got a piece of this in the forge right now. I'm going to do an integral knife. I've done these a few different times, but I got some of this today, and this is 3/4 of an inch diameter round bar that I forged out of a coil like this, and I want to go ahead and forge it into an integral knife. So I've done 1 inch bar, I've done 5/8 of an inch bar, but I haven't done 3/4 of an inch bar yet, so I figured I would go ahead and forge one of these down. Got your Maker's Mark today, heck yeah! So I've got a piece just like this. We're going to forge it into an integral knife. I think I'm just going to do a drop point kind of, I really wouldn't call it EDC because I don't know the size of the blade we're going to get out of this just yet. We're going to start forging. We're going to just figure it out. I'm going to be using all 2 bastard hammers. We're going to start off with the dog head that they made me. We're going to start that off today. And basically the 3 hammers that I'm going to be using are going to be that dog's head. We're going to be using a straight peen, cross peen setup right here, and the rounding hammer. The 2 Bastards and Markling collab of rounding hammer. We're going to use those in this particular live stream. Should be all we really need. We might use the Planishing hammer when we get to that point. Right now we got the forge lit up, warming up. What's up, Steve? How you doing? I'm just waiting on the steel to go ahead and warm up. My goal here is to go ahead and have the handle be just about this much of the steel. We are going to end up tapering it a little bit, flaring it a little bit, and actually making a comfortable handle. And then the whole front piece is going to be forged down into the blade. Basically what we need to start off with is we need to isolate the blade section from the handle section. So I need to go ahead and start forging down the round bar into basically a flat bar where the blade is going to be. That's what we're going to start off with. It should only take another couple of minutes for the piece of steel to heat up to where we can actually forge it. But again, the goal is to isolate what's going to be our blade steel. Okay, so we need to flatten this section out and just basically turn it into a piece of flat bar, and then we can go ahead and forge our profile and everything there. Is that Heinrich? What's up, Heinrich? And then we're going to end up working on the handle after that. What I want to do is get the section that's going to be the blade just forged kind of into flat bar area, and then once we get that done, we can flip and actually kind of rough forge in the handle and then go back to the blade profile. We are going to have integral bolster because the whole entire handle is going to be integral. And if you want to see what I've done with some of these before, I'll show y'all one. So this is out of a smaller piece of material. So this is one where the handle is all integral. So I was able to do that out of a piece of smaller material and get a full handle out of it, everything like that. I'm probably not going to go with that same profile. I'm going to do a little bit different profile, but I was able to get that much of blade out of a smaller piece of steel. Go ahead and rotate this. So warm up the other side. This is a piece of 5160, and it is a beast of a piece of steel to move. I had to forge this flat because, again, it started off as a coil. So before the video, before the live stream, I had to cut a strip of this off, take and forge basically about from here to here. I had to forge that flat, just like a round bar, so that I could then get to this point. And it was a pain in the butt to do. Gotta make a dagger out of a wrench. What quality material? For a knife. It really depends on the wrench. If you have, let's say you have an older monkey wrench and you want to do one, you can actually just take the actual head, this piece off right here, and forge that into a knife, because this is hardenable. This body is not. This is, because the jaws and this are the only two hardened pieces of steel on that whole entire wrench. And I've made several of those. Okay, we're almost to temp. What we want to have on this is the temp to be nice and hot, because again, this is a beast of a piece of material to move. Just trying to forge it from the coil to flat, that was a pain in the butt. So, and again, I like to forge it to where we just have a nice bar stock and then go from there whenever we're doing this. Where do you get your maker mark from? If you're talking to me, I do a electro etch for my maker's marks, and my wife actually cut them out on a Cricut little vinyl cutter tool. Okay, we're almost there. I'm running the forge at about 16 psi right now. So I'm not running it super hot, just because there's no need for it. Show us the hammer on the anvil. So we're going to be working with that one. This is, you see the mark on it, it's two bastards. This is a dog head hammer that he made me. The three that we're going to be using, again, this dog head. We're going to be using a straight and cross peen. These are a fatter straight and cross peen. Also two bastards. Beautiful hammer. And then this two bastards / Markling collaboration rounding hammer. These are the ones we're going to be using during this. We need this to be able to do the integral handle area. This is really important. Okay, should be hot enough to go ahead and start flattening this. We're just going to start from the tip and work our way back. The downside to working with round bar, until we actually get it flat, the downside is whenever you're hitting on this, it wants your hammer, it wants to make your hammer move all kinds of different directions, because you're not just hitting flat and rebounding back up. Whenever you hit, it's hitting at a different angle each time. Until we get that to where we have a flat section, it's just kind of unruly. So put that back in the forge, bring it back up to temp. We'll keep forging that section down. How heavy is this one? That's about 3.5 pounds for that one. It's not a super heavy one. Right now, it is a job. And I'm going to show y'all something. So for the people that are on here, so we released the Viking challenge today. I wanted to actually give y'all some close-ups of course, the sacks that I made for the Viking challenge. So that's the pattern we did on this side. And then on this side, we actually have the Rivers Experience, the maker's mark forged fuller in it, wrought iron guard, and then of course zebra bone for the handle. This thing has an absolute amazing fit up. There's no gaps anywhere on this. It's just unreal. So use it 2-hand, 1-hand, and it's balanced. Let's see what we got here. Right there. Just absolutely awesome. So let's go ahead and get this back out. Keep going with it. So on these first heats, we don't want to forge it too cold. We just want to kind of work our way into it. Yeah, she's an awesome sax, that's for sure. So once we get past this initial phase for this, you actually get to see what this thing really starts to look like. Pause just for a second here. Wipe this lens off. There we go. We're getting some crazy glare off the side over here. There. That's a lot clearer. So I would always suggest that we slightly heavier hammer. I would rather you go for a heavier hammer than a light hammer. Things where if you're in the teens, you can still forge with a like 2-pounder, 2.5-pounder, and you'll be fine. The hammer that you see right here, this is not a very heavy hammer. This is a pretty light hammer. You're only looking at like 2.5 pounds for this right here. This might be 2 3/4. So not a very heavy hammer versus when you're looking at one of my Fire Pig Forge hammers. This is a heavy hammer. That's about 5 pounds right there. I use this a lot. This one though, we are using pretty much all Two Bastards Forge hammers. The whole point behind that is, of course, they're the live stream sponsors. If you don't know about them, it's Frank and Nita, F and N. Frank and Nita, they're the Two Bastards. They've been supplying bladesmiths and blacksmiths for like 6 years. They don't just do hammers, they do swage blocks, they do hammer restorations, they sell restored hammers, they do like really small hammers too, like little bitty ball peen hammers for like actually working on pins and stuff like that, jewelers hammers, big swage blocks, all kinds of stuff. And I have them linked in every description for every video that I put out. But yeah, Frank and Nita, Two Bastards Smithy Supplies, absolutely awesome. They supply my hammers that I use. Going here. Now I'm going to switch to the other side and just kind of flatten out where the handle's going to be just a little bit. That way the whole entire thing is kind of like an oval, and we have a flat spot all the way down the side. And then what we're going to do is We're going to take the straight peen and isolate where the transition from the blade to the bolster, kind of like the ricasso area, is going to be. So we'll isolate that with the straight peen on both sides, using the area on the anvil that actually is rounded to match that straight peen. We'll go ahead and isolate that, and then we'll start forging down that blade. We're going to go ahead and flatten the backside just a little bit more. I'm going to bring y'all over, bring y'all down just a little bit. What's up, Pinto? How you doing? See, I started with a 2-pound as well, but for me, if I was going to use one hammer to do everything, I would use this one right here, bigger one. But I'm really, really, really liking this rounding hammer that I got from Two Bastards and Mark Lane. I really like this. Like, it's just enough profile on the round side and the flat side. And I like the handle comfort on this for the way that I hold my hammers. So I really, 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 really like that one. But I've been so used to using these 5-pound hammers, almost every hammer feels light to me. Now, we have kind of like an oval. We got a flat side. So now what I'm going to do is just kind of decide how long I want the handle to be to start off with. Leave it about right there. Put a little mark. That's going to be our handle isolation point. So we know how long our blade's going to be, how long our handle's going to be. We don't need the handle to be too long right off the bat because we're going to be tapering it and adding extra length. Let's shift you off. Hammer like that for 150. Is that a good price? Yeah, that's a good price. Does handle length make a big difference? So with the handle length, really that is a personal preference for where you choke up on it. A lot of the handles that you get for most hammers are going to be longer than this. This is like a shorter, medium to shorter size handle length. The ones that I get from Fire Creek are even shorter. This little guy right here, because of where you hold it, you don't hold it all the way down here. It's too big of a hammer for that. So this one has a really short stubby handle. This is a medium to shorter length handle. And then when you go to something like this right here, that's an even longer handle for this. That's the longest handle that I have on a hammer. So kind of the beginning portion of this is always, hey, what's up, Jeff? Thank you, Jeff. So with a lot of the forging of these round bar and stuff like that, The initial stuff isn't super interesting just because all we're doing is trying to get the round bar to be able to be forged into a knife. So we're just kind of setting things up to be able to shift the material later. But what's cool about it is once it starts turning into a knife, you really can see it because with this, the handle and everything are going to be forged into the knife. So whenever I'm done forging this, you'll have a knife handle profile and a blade profile all together in one. Handle scales are not going to get added to this. So what I forge is going to be the knife. So by the end of this video, you'll see a full knife profile, handle profile, everything, which is pretty cool. So I've been bladesmithing, the actual forging side of bladesmithing for a few years now, and I've made a lot of knives. I've been knife making for about 5 years. Previous to doing the bladesmithing part, the blacksmithing part, I was doing stock removal. Okay, let's go ahead, shift y'all just a little bit. Grabbing the straight peen, figuring out where our notch is that we've forged into there, and just go ahead and start upsetting the shoulders here. Forging it from both sides. Okay, so all we're doing at that point is we are starting to forge this section right here. We're going to smush it. We're going to forge it down to basically a blade thickness right there. And that is going to create the transition from the blade into the handle. So put it back in the forge. Bring it back up to 10. Go ahead and do that a few more times. Like I said a minute ago, this section of my anvil right here has the same radius as the edge of my straight peen hammer. So the anvil is radiused just like this. What's up, Sydney? So just like this right here, the anvil edge is the same radius. So I can come in and I can forge here and it will pinch it evenly on both sides. What's up, Matt? Well, Christopher, I'm happy to have you here. You should use birthday. What's up, Lance? Get that back up to 10. We'll go ahead and again, we're just forging on that one section right here. And we're pinching it to be able to create that transition. I would bring y'all all the way down over here, but I guarantee you I would lose Wi-Fi and I would drop the whole entire signal because we are like at the edge of my Wi-Fi in this shop right here. And I want to make sure y'all can see as much of this stuff as you can. As a matter of fact, what I might do, you know, I'm going to bring the anvil closer to y'all. Let's see here. There we go. Just drop y'all down just a hair. There. You see this area right here? That is the area that we're forging on right now. pinching it right there. Going. Now what I'll end up doing is I'll end up transitioning from the straight peen and forging right here to forging on what we call the flats or the blade with the cross beam, and then drawing it down just a little bit, and then going back and forging with the straight beam again. What that's going to do is right now, by forging with the straight beam, we're creating the shoulder and getting a little bit of length. We need to switch to the cross beam to be able to get height out of it. So that's what we're about to do. We're going to switch it up, go with the cross beam. We're going to come in here and we're going to work on the height of the blade in this next heat. That'll give us a little bit of extra height, and then also forge into that little section a little bit as well. Okay. Over here, straight peen, cross peen. Right now, we're not super worried about making things look pretty. This is not the pretty phase. This is the move material kind of to where you need it to be phase. Whenever we actually start forging the blade profile, then we'll start focusing on the prettier aspects and planishing and stuff like that. But right now, we're just trying to move material to where it needs to go, get those preforms set up, and then we can start making things look pretty. This is the point. This isn't the point where we make things look like a knife. We make things look like a knife-shaped object, and then we start forging them into all those areas. What's up, Matt? Thanks. Yeah, Matt's sax was absolutely awesome. So, again, for the people that just hopped on, today we released the Viking Challenge. That is what I made for the Vikings Challenge, and I actually forged this blade on one of the live streams. So if you want to see how that was forged, you can go check that out in the live streams. Today we are working on a full integral knife, meaning the handle, the blade, everything are all out of one piece of steel. You're going to start seeing it actually flare. So it's starting to grow this way on both sides. We still got a lot of material. I mean, we're at still a 1/2 inch thick at this area right here. We need to bring that down at least to where it's at most a 1/4 inch thick. Now it's still very thick. Probably, just to make it a little bit easier on me, I'm going to use the slightly narrower cross peen on this next one. And as we go through this and we're forging, as this gets more heats into it, the steel is going to stay hotter longer and heat up faster. Let's see what you got here. What metal is that? It is 5160 round bar that I forged from a coil spring. So literally earlier today, this piece of material we're working with was a coil spring just like this. I took it from that, and I forged it down into a straight bar like this here. And then we're forging it from this to a full integral knife. One of the ones that I did in the past look like this right here. This one's not going to look like this, but that's one that I did where the handle and everything are all forged into the actual blade itself. I've done a bunch of different profiles. I think we're going to do like a drop point hunter on this one. Again, on this one, we're going to come in with a little bit more aggressive cross peen. Start to really start flaring out there. What's funny is once you get past these initial steps, from that point forward, this thing pretty much looks like a knife. Integral bolster is nice. Awesome. Thank you for that. I like it whenever I get to do the integral knives because I really get to put as much balance in them as I want. And once you get it forged, it's a knife. You can pretty much put an edge on it and call it done, of course, after you heat treat it. But I really like knives like this because they're just super fun to do. And I could put a real cool oil finish on it, and it makes it real nice corrosion resistance, especially where you're going to hold it and things like that. You don't really have to worry about sweating and rust it out. It'll have a finish like what's on this, where it's all black, like this. I've held this plenty of times. I've had it out here for a long time, and humidity and everything, and there's no surface rust on that whatsoever. And it gets put in my sweaty hands all the time. Keep going in with the cross peen. Now this next heat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start focusing on this section right here and just fatten that out. It'll make it a little bit easier to use, or easier to forge on. Right now, it's still having some of that roundness to it. It's still wanting to bounce around. We'll take a lot of that out of it. We'll take and forge that. Get that stretched out right there, get more of that height. So where's everybody from that's in the chat right now? Where are all the viewers from? I like seeing whenever, there's people from all over the place. And I think it's really cool, especially whenever we have as many viewers as we have right now. It's real cool to actually see where y'all are actually viewing from. We get a lot of people from all over the place. And how many of y'all are actually interested in knife making versus you're just watching this just for the sake of it? I always like to see those numbers. much quicker you can forge whenever it's not bouncing around on you. New Brunswick, Canada, heck yeah. Michigan, Colorado, Athens, Georgia, Canada. Yeah, that's awesome. Make knives to teach veteran to make knives. That's awesome, Joseph. You're a truck driver, cool. Lance in Kansas. So I'm from a place called Wichita Falls, Texas. It's a nice small town in between Dallas, Fort Worth, and Oklahoma City. And I do all of this stuff, all this blacksmithing in the middle of a neighborhood. Which is always interesting whenever I use this thing, the power hammer. Whenever I'm using the power hammer, yeah, it's always fun trying to be quiet enough to not absolutely annoy my neighbors. I could be using that during the live stream, but nah, I like forging these by hand during these. Now, you can see that we're starting to get a uniform thickness on that area. We still have kind of like the oval area down here where the handle is going to be. And then we're starting to isolate our our blade. Now, of course, we need to cut it down about another half of that, or forge it down to even half of the thickness that it is right now. So we're going to keep using the cross peen, opening that up. I'm going to keep using the narrow one for about probably 2 more heats, and then I'll go through, switch to the fatter one because it puts less aggressive marks in the steel, which means I can smooth it out a lot easier. You know, and there is a real big difference between the two on here. So this is a very acute angle, of course more rounded, obtuse. This one actually lets you draw it out a lot faster because it puts real deep dents into it and really starts widening it. And then this one kind of puts a bigger dent in it and makes it easier to smooth out later. You know, a lot of what we're doing right now is moving material to the right spot without trying to cause an issue later in the actual forging process. Because what you don't want to do is start using a hammer, start beating the heck out of the steel, and then you got to correct that dent later. Especially for us when we're doing like a brute to forge finish, we want to make sure that the hammer blows that we do to these blades, that whenever we go and we grind them, we can actually have that hammer forge finish still on there. So if we start getting too crazy with the hammers, it'll screw us up later. Now we shall need 1 more heat with the narrow cross peen, and then we can switch to the fatter one. Check into the press, small press with material well. Yeah, I thought about doing a press. I I have the power hammer over here, and I like using it. When it comes to using a press or getting a press, it's making sure you have the budget for one. I'm still young enough and comfortable enough with forging, so it doesn't really bother me. The big reason why I'll end up doing a press is more for Damascus than being able to make it easier on me with forging. I forge. I no longer get things like blisters on my hands or anything like that. I can forge for 6 hours and it's fine. Now, hey, speaking of that, I'm going to be doing the Dragon Forge experience in Texas later this year, where I'll be forging for 10 hours, 2 days in a row. So 20 hours in a weekend, just forging all kinds of different stuff, which is going to be cool. I'm going to live stream it. What's up, Miss Rivers?
If you want to show your starting material versus where you're at.
Okay, he makes a good point. So earlier today, the thing that we're forging, earlier today, it looked like this. It was a coil spring. I forged it to look like this bar right here. So what we're working with right now started off like this earlier today. I cut it off of a piece of suspension. We forged it into a bar like this. And now we're working with it to turn it into a fully integral knife where the handle and the blade are all one piece. So this will not have wood material on the actual handle. Planishing. Yeah, we'll be, so again, of course we went from that material to where we're at right now, which will end up being a blade before this is all said and done. Now we can switch to the fatter cross beam straight beam. Cool thing is, whenever we actually switch to where I'm working on the handle, I can use my other tongs as opposed to these. These right here are tongs that are about 50 years old. They are old school tongs. The everything was all forged. The actual tines are forge welded onto the front pieces, which is pretty cool. You see the little forge weld section right there. These are cool. These are old school tongs right here. Super long handle on them. Absolutely love them. Okay. We're about to pull it out. Start forging a little bit more. Getting more out of the height. Using the fatter cross beam. And don't let the lighting in here fool you. The steel is a lot harder than it seems. My lighting makes the steel look colder than it is, but if I turned off all the lights, that would still be glowing red. I have some people that wonder why I'm forging it colder like that. It's not colder. I am making a kind of like a drop point hunter knife with a full integral body. So kind of like how I did this one right here, where the handle is all integral right there. But this one started off with much smaller bar stock. So this is a round bar that we took from a coil like this, forged it into a straight bar like this, and now we're forging that into a full integral knife. What we're working on right now is isolating the blade area from the handle. We are flattening it down and making it to where we're basically forging this round bar into flat bar stock. So regular bar stock that you would typically forge a knife out of. Do you, well, Paul C? I don't know, but they're probably going to remove you from the chat for that. What kind of steel? It is 5160. I'm surprised the mods didn't even do or mess with that yet. Let's see here. Let's keep going on this. Some of y'all might be wondering, what am I going to do? Where am I going to create the heel for this actual blade here? So what's going to happen is, because right now we're flattening this whole entire area, you can see we're starting to get a uniform thickness throughout it. We're flattening this area. What we're going to end up doing later is we're going to hang the blade off the edge of the anvil, and we're going to hammer on the top of this hump right here. We're going to shift all the material down, and it's going to create the heel for the actual blade. And then as we forge in the bevels, it's going to bring that heel even more and more and more down, and we're going to have a nice heel to our blade. So what we're going to do on this next heat is we're going to clean up the transition between the blade and the handle a little bit and just even the blade into the handle. And what I mean by that is we're going to center the spine in the handle just a little bit. Make sure we have it nice and centered in this ricasso area. And then we're going to go ahead and start working on the handle, get it roughly forged, and then we'll switch back to the blade and forge the profile of the blade and go from there. So the next couple of heats are going to be focused on centering things. We're going to shift the heel down and create a nice even spine throughout the actual blade itself. So we're going to take and we're going to make a nice even spine by shifting the material down and creating this heel. We'll pull that down, make this nice and even, and then we'll focus on this. So center, even, and focus on the handle a little bit. The cool thing about this is you don't need a whole bunch of hammers to be able to do this. You don't need a whole bunch of tools to be able to do this. I'm using only a few hammers. We're going to be using a total of like 2 types of tongs to do this, and then it's just hammer control. Focusing on what you're doing with the hammers that you're using. Let's see here. Thank you, Dana. And again, this is 5160. Long form demonstration for a while now. Well, I'm happy to have you here, Spartacus. Chef's knives that won't keep an edge, the blade stay sharp. My blades do stay sharp. If you're using chef's knives, they are stainless steel. A lot of them are just your normal stainless steels. They're not really going to stay sharp. Stainless steel is not built for that. High carbon steel is going to stay sharp longer. All you typically have to do is drop it or hone it on a honing rod, and you'll be fine. But high carbon knives are a more pain in the butt to maintain than stainless steel. Stainless steel can get wet, be wet for a little bit. If you leave a high carbon knife with water on it, it's going to start rusting. So there's a little bit more care that you have to do for it, but it will stay sharp longer. I'll tell you a story here in just a second. So let's go ahead, focus on centering our blade. Okay, so we're good there. We're going to switch hammers, and I'm going to shift this blade over. Okay. So now we've got our blade shifted over to center. Right there. Got decently smooth. Bolsters coming down into it. Now, of course, those are just roughed in. Nothing too crazy there. We're going to switch, and we're going to grab the blade side of the other set of tongs. These right here, these kind of box jaw tongs. They're actually for doing blade smithing. They hold the steel really easily. And what we're going to end up doing is we're going to come in, we're going to get it hot again. We're going to come to the edge here, and we're going to shift our spine down and create our heel. We want to do this before we start making things look prettier. Again, we're still not in the pretty phase. We'll be in the pretty phase once we actually get the handle profile roughed in. So we're going to get the handle to about 75%, and then we're going to switch to the blade, get it to about 75%, and then we'll start making everything look pretty. We'll start getting a nice transition into those bolsters with working with the hammer and anvil. Pull linseed oil after each use for kitchen knives. So I'll tell you what I use for a lot of my knives. There's this stuff called wicked wax. It's like this right here. This is food safe wax. Use that on your blades. If you get like a surface corrosion on your blades, there's Wicked Clean that they make. So this has a slight grit to it. Whenever you take and you put this on a little towel, a cotton towel, and you'll clean your blade with it, it'll take surface rust and corrosion off the blade. Now, if you have a nice patina on it, this will also take some of the patina off, but this will take a lot of that off, and then you use your food safe wicked wax, and that will maintain a blade for you. It's food safe, does not have mineral oil in it. A lot of people don't know this, but mineral oil has a percentage of fecal matter in it. A lot of people don't know that, but yeah, mineral oil typically has fecal matter, which is crazy, isn't it? You make your own tongs. No, I get them from people who make them. Same thing with my hammer. So if you build a forge kind of like mine, you can have about $150 invested into it, and have one like this. It's a 2-burner side forge with an 18-inch long internal chamber. So it's a very deep forge. I can typically make decent sized swords and stuff like that with it. 2 burners. It's very efficient. I really like it. And I've got videos on my forges all on the website. You can use olive oil. I really wouldn't suggest using it too much. Should have gotten some from Chad. Yep. Also, where does one source a decent anvil? So if you're going to get into this, the easiest anvil to get is this one right here. This is by Vivor. That's a 130-pound anvil, and it's got a super flat surface. It's got a nice rebound. If you're going to get into this right off the bat, get one of those Vivor anvils or get a Harbor Freight anvil, and you'll be fine. If you're wanting to get a good anvil like this, there is a dude on Instagram. His first name that's on it is Estes. It's like Estes underscore something. I can't remember exactly what it is. If I remember later, I'll create a post for it on the actual community post for YouTube. And he actually sources a lot of anvils, but you can get them off Facebook Marketplace. They're just not super cheap. So what we do now is we're going to create that heel. So hang the handle over the anvil, blade off the anvil. Now, we don't have that hump anymore right here. We got a nice spine, we got our heel started. So that's going to transition real well into that. But of course, we'll clean things up as we go. It's not 100% what I want it to be, but as we start drawing down the bevels, it's just going to create more and more and more of that heel, because we're going to be forging those bevels in. And that again is going to give us a nice even little heel right here that you can do some real clean work to. That's what we're shooting for. So we're going to continue working on that transition area. We're going to continue working on the handle. I want to go ahead and start forging the handle out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a slight distal taper to the handle. So we're going to be flattening it on both sides, putting a slight distal taper, and then I'll end up forging on the top and bottom of it and create almost like an I-beam effect, which is going to look like this right here. So we're going to taper it from the front to the back, and then we are going to flare the top and bottom of it to create kind of like that I-beam effect. And that is going to give us the full handle, and it's going to give us extra length. Start putting a taper to it. Of course, we're going to bring it down quite a bit more than that. But we only need about 4.5 inches in the actual handle length. So I don't need anything super crazy, but we're going to bring that taper down pretty aggressive and then flare it out. It makes for a really cool look, especially for how big we're going to make this handle. So I think it's going to look real cool. And the thing is, you can start seeing that we start getting a knife profile. As soon as I start forging in the tip here, we're going to start having a knife profile. And we did all of this out of a piece of material that looked like that. Not your standard piece of material. So how long have I been making knives? For about 5 years. I've been forging consistently for over 2, and I've forged a lot. So it's not like I've just been forging kind of here and there. I forge a lot, and I really enjoy it. I've been a full-time knife maker for about 6 months now. So we're about where we need to be lengthwise. This step down on the anvil here is the width of my hand. So I know that if I can grab it right there, we're pretty much good. We need to draw it out just a little bit more. As you can see, we're putting a nice taper to it right there. We're still going to bring it out just a little bit more. Move y'all back just a smidge. There we go. But I enjoy doing this. Knife making is a hobby that transitioned to a full-time job. I would recommend flat grind and a 3/4 pound sledge. So if you're going to get into knife making, 2 hammers that you're going to need: a rounding hammer. So this is flat on one side, round on the other. Get yourself a cross peen, straight peen. You can easily grind this on a Harbor Freight little sledgehammer that they have. You could grind one like this just on your own. And then on a Harbor Freight sledge, you can also do a flat side and a round side. There are plenty of videos teaching you how to do it. So the people that supply the hammers for me, they will actually tell you right off the bat, before they suggest. So again, it's Two Bastards Smithing and Supplies, Frank and Nita. They're the ones that sponsor the live streams and all that too. But they'll tell you, hey, what type of hammer do you have now? If you say, I don't have any hammers, they'll suggest the hammers that you need, and they'll either suggest that you make your own, or they'll actually make one for you, which is pretty cool. Keep working on this handle. And I'm using the round side of this during this part. We definitely have enough handle there now. So we can clean it up just a little bit. Make sure it's kind of centered. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to create a little bit of that I-beam effect. You'll see what I'm talking about as we start forging. So we're going to get it hot again. I'm not going to go too crazy on this part because I need to get into forging the blade profile. Handle. We want to get the handle about 75% done, then go into the blade. All that where we want it to be. I'm making a kind of like a drop point hunter knife. You can call it kind of like a camp knife, but it's going to be a drop point knife. And I would say the closest thing that I have to it would be something kind of similar to this right here. Now, of course, this is one of my full tang camp knives right here. That's got Gidgee on it and curly maple. That's a pretty cool one. Still got to work on this one, finish it up. But we're just doing a drop point hunter style. So something that's good for having at a campsite, skinning, doing all kinds of different things. Thank you, Binks. If they're live, didn't expect to see a blacksmith. Heck yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Watch this type of stuff for hours. It's pretty cool being able to just watch somebody forge like this. I love doing it on the lives because I get to actually talk to people as opposed to just doing a video. So we're going to start forging on the top and bottom. Kind of going in at an angle and rounding it. This is going to give us a profile that's going to be comfortable to hold. Okay, I'm going to leave it right there. I'm not going to go too crazier than that because I don't want to end up marring it up. But you can see that we're starting to flare. We're starting to flare this bottom and top out. And basically, it's like having a comfort fit ring. So we're going to round the top of the spine and the belly, and we're going to have a nice comfortable handle when this is all said and done. But right now we don't want to go too crazy on that because we're about to forge the heck out of the blade, and if we make this section look pretty, we're going to screw it up by holding it with the tongs as we're forging all of this stuff out. We don't want that to happen, but I want you to see what it looks like now. Basically, we got a bolt cutter or a square blade or a really thick butter knife. This is what it looks like right now. Within the next like 20 minutes, you're going to be like, oh, that's a dang knife. So on the next steps, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, forge in the point, forge in the tip of the knife. And then once we get the actual profile, which is going to make this really look like a knife, we're going to forge in that point, and then we're going to start cleaning up the transition from the handle into the bolsters, start forging the heel down, and then start forging in the bevels. In this pre-form phase, what we're going to kind of do is we're going to create like a sheep's foot profile. And what that means is where our spine is going to go all the way down like this. It's going to curve down, and then the cutting edge is going to be flat. Because what ends up happening is when we start forging in the bevels, it's going to bring that point from being all the way down here to being up here, because we're going to stretch all that material going to the point. So that is the next step here. Give y'all an idea, an actual look at what I'm talking about here. So basically we're going to forge something like this. And then whenever we start forging this area here, it's going to bring the point up. So that's the profile that we're about to forge. right. Beginner handle materials, what's my go-to? I like stabilized woods. I like micartas and G10s. Those are going to be your first materials to really use is micarta, G10, and then any type of stabilized wood you can get. A lot of people will want to use regular woods that you can buy from like a hardware store. Those are not stabilized or hardwoods. They will shrink and expand and contract depending on the temperature outside, how much moisture is in the air. And what will happen is your pin material will start poking you in the hands, or you'll get gaps between your handle scales and the tang of your knife. Stabilized woods minimize that. Things like micarta and G10 minimizes that. I would also use micarta pins or G10 pins as opposed to brass or stainless pins. Close pore cell wood. So if you're going to use woods, I would use like ironwood, gidgee, which is acacia. Those, woods like that, ebonies, those are naturally dense, hard woods, so you really don't have to worry about that. So a stabilization process is where they impregnate it with resin of some sort. They've got all kinds of stuff, cactus juice, they've got all kinds of things that will actually make them hard, but they're actually fully hardened woods. I'll show you some. So this right here, they can dye them in the stabilizing process like this, but this is fully stabilized wood here, which means it's not going to expand or contract under extreme weather conditions like a non-stabilized wood will. All right, let's go ahead, forge in this tip. So what we're going to forge on the corners and create a tip without gritting fish lips. On the corner, on the corner, start pulling that down into a point. Again, we want to get heat back into it on this because we don't want to start moving the material a ton without having a lot of heat. You want it to be hot so that you don't end up screwing up your steel. Well, Charles, I'm happy to have you here learning. It's good. I love it when people learn how to do this stuff. And yes, just like Mule said, G10 and micarta, very durable stuff to mess with. Yep, exactly what Steve said right there. Okay, come back in, keep forging on that tip. And you can absolutely get after it when you're forging in the tip like this, but if you don't take your time and do this step the right way, you'll end up creating fish lips on the end. You'll either have to cut them off or do something later. Just take your time at this point right here, and you won't have to worry about doing that. But if you do create fish lips on the end, which just means you're forging like this, and fish lips is when you start forging here and here too much, and it starts expanding the steel out around, as opposed to pushing the steel like this. You are expanding the top and the bottom out, and it does that and creates fish lips, as opposed to compressing and squishing the tip out. So it creates more work later. Working it down right there. We'll have our tips done here pretty soon. What's going to end up happening on the next couple of heats is we're going to shift it from right now. The point comes up to where the spine is. We're going to shift that down to that point is on the cutting edge side of the blade. And the whole point behind that is what ends up happening is going all the way down. Whenever we forge it and we point the tip all the way to here, the steel that's all the way along the edge is the same steel. So basically, like the grain structure of it is natural to where it flows. It's all running in line how it was naturally. Instead of cutting off the tip or cutting off a portion, and then you have grain structure running through part of it, and then it ends towards the tip. This keeps that grain structure running all the way through. Is it a huge thing that you have to focus on? I don't know, maybe not, but I focus on it. Right now we got ourselves a butter knife, a full forged butter knife. So we got a tip forged into there, 0 fish lips, and now we're just going to continue to preform it, drop that tip down towards the cutting edge. Again, so when we forge in our bevels, it brings the tip up. Osage orange, Bogart, yep, both of those. Here's a question I think newbies should ask. What's the story on magnets? Knowing the color, what's a common debate? Videos, rarely gets asked. So magnets, you'll have some people that use the magnets in a few different ways. They'll use the magnets for checking to see if something has been heated up to non-magnetic before they quench. It's kind of an okay process to use, but there's better methods. You also see some people that take the magnets and they stick them on their anvils. And what that does is it decreases the ring of the anvil. Easier way to do that is just put silicone between your anvil and the base. So take your anvil, put it on your base, draw an outline of your anvil, take the anvil off, put silicone in that outline, stick your anvil on, then strap it down, and you won't have all that ringing noise. Not having to deal with magnets and all of that stuff. So now we're going to drop that tip down towards the cutting edge. Now, we got the tip towards the cutting edge. Now we can go ahead and start cleaning up our blade, getting the evenness where we want it, get the thickness all nice and good, get the bolster area cleaned up, all of that stuff. And then, when we start forging in our bevels, our tip's going to go in the right direction. So, next few heats will be focused on cleaning up the blade, getting the thickness where we want it. I feel like I need to forge it down just a little bit thinner than where it's at right now. And we're going to be using the round side of the hammer for a lot of this work. On this particular hammer, the round side isn't super aggressive. So the round side isn't super aggressive. I'm ahead of myself, but what's your take on Damascus? I like Damascus. I I will be making a lot of it here soon. But I personally am a big fan of Damascus. But like I said, we're going to be using the round side of this hammer. If I was to use the round side, this is my most aggressive rounding hammer. That right there, you start forging with that thing, and you're going to move steel. Steel is going to go everywhere. It is a super aggressive rounding hammer. Might as well be a really fat ball peen. So, using the round side of this and just start moving material to where we want it to be. So what we're trying to do right now is, of course, thin down the blade, get it where we need it to be before we actually start forging in our bevels. We're still going to have to center the edge up again, clean up a few things, but right now we're just trying to thin out that blade so we have a nice even thickness and a manageable piece of steel without having like a 1/2 inch thick spine. And for this, we're probably going to end up with about a 6-inch long cutting edge when it's all said and done. You know what I mean? I'm a whitesmith. Technically, I'm a bladesmith. See here. Walnut's beautiful. Yep. And yes, what Steve said, poplar is way too soft. A lot of people use poplar in making scabbards, so making the actual wooden sheaths for when you're going to do like a katana scabbard or a sword scabbard. I'm using poplar as the main body for the scabbard for the Viking sword. I'm going to take it, profile it, and then I'm going to wrap it in leather. What's up, Gavin? How you doing? Cycles cool spring. So what we're using right now, we started with this earlier today. This was on an actual spring I cut off. So this right here, or I guess on a strut that's down here on the floor. Cut it from that, forged it into a flat round bar like this right here. And now we're forging that into a full integral knife. Meaning the blade and the handle are all one piece. Right now we're working on the thickness of the blade. Okay, so we have a thickness that I'm comfortable with right now. It's of course not all straight and things like that, but now what we need to do is go ahead and shift the spine back down a little bit more. We got that hump right here. We need to shift that down. So on this next heat, what we're going to do is hang it off the anvil, hang the blade off the anvil, come in, forge here, and we're going to go ahead and get that spine shifted back down, and then we can go ahead and draw the bevels out just a little bit, and then we want to clean up the transition between the bolster and the ricasso area. So we're not super focused on making the blade look super pretty at this point right now. What we're really focused on is getting the material, again, still in that moved phase. shifted where it needs to go. When we start working on the heel, we'll start forging in those bevels and pulling that down. We'll get a real defined blade structure, and then it'll really start looking like a knife. Right now, it just kind of looks like a knife-shaped object, but it's kind of getting to where we want it to be. The cool thing is, in this last like 30 minutes of this live stream, it's really going to transition to a nice blade with full forged-in bevels, a nice blade profile, a nice handle profile, pretty close to forge to finish. All right, Steve, I'll talk to you later. That'll be my next question. How do you determine the thickness of the spine according to what desired edge geometry? So for me, I typically forge between 3/16 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch for most of the knives that I make. I don't tend to make them at 1/8 of an inch or below unless it's going to be a chef's knife. But for a lot of my EDCs or my camp knives, they're between 3/16 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch. So I typically forge to about that thickness, not so much focusing on it being exact, but typically it'll be between that 3/16 and 1/4. Let's go ahead and shift this down. Shift it a little bit. I'm going to grab it from the blade side. Now we have our spine profile that we want. We've got our heel more defined right there. Now start pulling those bevels down. Again, we'll get our blades to about 75–80% done. And then go from there. About 75–80% done on the blade, then go back to working on the handle, then finish the blade out. And all we're going to be doing at that phase is just planishing. And then the last steps that we'll be doing are all going to be on the handle. But we want to make sure that we get our blade pretty much to where it needs to be before we actually really focus on the handle. Because go back to then holding the handle, these tongs, it's going to we did to the handle up. What's up, man? How you doing? Well, thank you, Randy. I would say tips to get started. Of course, there's a lot of videos on my channel from whenever I actually started doing this to now. My whole entire knife making journey is all on YouTube from the day that I started making knives to where I'm at this point right here. So you can actually see how I transitioned. But I would say if you want to get into the blacksmithing side of it or the bladesmithing side, get yourself an inexpensive anvil from Harbor Freight. Get yourself a few hammers from Harbor Freight. You can easily modify them to be like the primary hammers that we use, a rounding hammer, and then a straight peen, cross peen hammer. You can easily modify those hammers to be like that. Get yourself a little 1x30 from Harbor Freight and start making knives. Whenever I first started making them, my first knife was out of a file, a Nicholson file, because I was able to do everything to it without having to heat treat it. Whenever you make a file knife, all you really have to do is just temper it back. Got my very first video making a file knife. If you want to watch that, you can see how I did it. And that's all you really need to work on. Get the simple basics down without having to go too crazy into it. Right now, we're going to start pulling our bevels down using the round side of our hammer and working from halfway up. Now we have an actual heel to our knife, so that's going to be where our cutting edge starts and works our way up. Go ahead and center that back up just a little bit. Nope. What I'm going to do before we start going too crazy with the bevels is I'm going to go ahead and just clean up the profile just a little bit on the blade. I want to show you this real quick. I want to take some of this hump that's right here out, and I want it to have more of a taper towards the tip, without having that real drastic drop off right there. That way we have a nice, clean profile up to the point. What's your best estimate for total startup cost? You can easily get started up with this whole entire thing with the forge, anvils from Harbor Freight, all that stuff. For around, I would say less than $600. Get yourself a forge, get a less expensive anvil that you can off of Harbor Freight. Get a couple of hammers from Harbor Freight. You can get tongs for really cheap off of Amazon or Vevor. Vevor makes these tongs that I have right here, which I'll be doing a video on here soon. You can get this whole set right here for pretty cheap. I'll have a video out on those, and these do pretty much everything that you need tongs to do. And you can easily get into this for around $500 or less. Now we have that cleaned up a little bit.
Did see the question that no one asked about what Austin dropped off?
Austin dropped off a lot of stuff. So I've got like 3 bins worth of stuff. What's up, Crystal? How you doing? So he dropped off timing chains, and I've got some more chainsaw blades or chains. I've got railroad spikes. I've got all kinds of things.
That came from it.
The coils that we're working on right now. So this steel right here came from him, which is pretty cool. He dropped that off today, and I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna wait. I'm gonna go ahead and make a knife with it. Uh-huh. Okay, so chains. Go ahead, point it on there. So a whole bunch of timing chains I'm gonna do in canister Damascus. It's gonna be pretty cool. Where do you go for your identification of different steels? I typically just go to Google. Google is your best friend. And type in the thing that you're looking up and you'll be able to find it. Start working on these bevels. So you can see real quick, it's already starting to pull this tip up as we do this. All I'm doing is I'm using the rounding hammer on the bottom half of the blade here. So okay, go back in the heat. And then what we're trying to do right now is just kind of start working on the bevels, and then we're going to clean the blade profile up a little bit more, work on the bevel some more, clean the blade profile up. This is where you start making things look prettier. And of course we need to work on the bolsters a little bit, but you don't really work on that section until you actually get your bevels kind of where they need to go. Because if you start cleaning up that area right now and then start forging in your bevels, you're going to screw up that area by it resting on the side of the anvil. What I mean by that is when we're forging on the bevels right here, we have this area, which is the transition between the ricasso and the bolster, sitting on the edge of the anvil. So it's just getting hammered in this little area that's supposed to be smooth on the edge of the anvil over and over and over again. So you need to pull your bevels down to where they need to be and then come back in and clean up that area right there so that you have a nice transition in this area up to your spine. And you have a nice looking front to your handle. A lot of this is working in phases and steps, and making sure that you actually get everything going in the right way. Okay, we're getting the bevels nice and thin. That's the spine or the belly versus how thick the spine is. So we're getting those forged in. Another process here in just a second with the actual straight peen, cross peen hammer. We'll switch to that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to pull the heel of the blade back just a little bit. But yeah, a lot of heat, beat, and repeat. There's a lot of people, Elbeck, that read it like that. And I do make a lot of full tank knobs like Miss Rivers' experience over there said. And it shows in the background. Yeah, I've got a lot of different profiles. So ones that I forged in these live streams, I'll show y'all a couple of them. So we have forged everything from buoys on these live streams to saxes with integral, not really integral, but with forged in fullers and bevels. Quakens with full forged in bevels, short spears with full forged in bevels. I've done a lot of things in these live streams, so you've got plenty of content. If you want to get into this and see what I'm doing the whole entire process, these live streams are the best ones to do and watch. Now I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to try and pull this heel back a little bit with the straight pin. Bring it down, bring it back. So what we did there was we pulled this back just a little bit. Now, if you look at this, the blade goes up at an angle here. The tang, or the handle, goes up this way. Whenever I take and I put an arch into this whole entire spine, it's going to bring this heel back because the handle is going to drop down and it's going to make this more of a 90-degree angle. Now we'll see that when we actually finish doing that particular part of this. Do that step now so that whenever we finish it, it actually has the right profile that we're looking for. So let's keep cleaning up that profile, getting those bevels nice and even. Doing a full integral knife takes a little bit more work than if I was just forging a piece of flat bar. If I'm just forging a piece of stock like this is easy. All we got to do is keep it the thickness that we are having right now. We have a reference point. Whenever we're making something like this, we are choosing the thickness and then keeping that thickness. Everywhere where we move the steel, that is a thickness that only existed because we forged it there. There was nothing to reference here. I'm choosing the thickness of the spine, the thickness of the cutting edge, the thickness of the handle, the tapers. I'm choosing all of that thickness, and I'm having to hold myself accountable to keep it even as I'm going through. I have nothing to reference other than what I think is even. Forging as a hobby is pretty awesome. It's more like shape shifting. I like that. I got that old shape shifting steel. That's actually pretty funny. I'm gonna have to name a video of that. And you know, the big goal here is to be able to do this enough to where you're confident with the steps that you're doing. What's up, Blake? To where you're confident with the steps that you're doing so that you get the end result that you're going for. All right, let's work on this blade some more. starting to get a very even knife thickness and shape. All that, of course, it's not super straight or anything just yet, but we're getting everything to where I want. You make a forge with fire bricks and a torch? You sure can. I've got a video of doing that on the channel. My first forge was an ammo can that I converted to a forge using a matte gas torch. But I'll tell you, you might think that you need to do that, but you can actually get a burner off of Amazon. You can get a burner with the propane regulator in line and use one of these propane tanks for the same price that it would take to get a matte gas torch. So look yourself up a Frosty Tea burner or a forge burner off of Amazon with the propane regulator and the gas line and everything to hook it straight up to one of these tanks, and get yourself some fire bricks from hightemptools.com. hightemptools.com. They'll send you fire bricks. They're like the cheapest place to get fire bricks. This whole entire forge right here that I use is made from just fire bricks, 2 Amazon burners, and I just built a little frame for it to be able to hold them. But you can easily put the burners from the top down. I got fire bricks down here from a top-down forge that I built. It's actually on the channel. So you've got the ability to do a lot of these things without having to sacrifice anything. There are videos on YouTube on how to do all of this stuff, which is really cool, man. Could you imagine how advanced we'd be if 100 years ago they had YouTube? Yeah, like what Mark said right there. What's up, Mark? How you doing? Can we get the info typed out? Yeah, I'll go ahead and make sure we can do that. Take around $300 to start roughly. All my tongs for free. Yep. Mark, how you doing tonight? We're gonna work on the little old knife here. Now I'm kind of forging in a distal taper towards the tip. To make grinding easier later. A little bit of planishing, a little bit of evening things up on that blade. Centering our tip and our cutting edge. Right now it's going to be kind of hard to see because the handle's not super straight. But you can see right now our cutting edge is even. Our spine for the most part is even. But of course, again, it's hard to see because of the handle. But we have a taper that goes from here to the tip. Right there. You can see that against the ground. Taper that goes all the way to the tip. Now what we need to do is go ahead and I want to clean up the area where the bolsters go down into the ricasso. And then I'm going to go ahead and shift the handle down. As a matter of fact, yeah, I'm going to clean up the bolsters just a little bit. Then I'm going to shift that down and I'll clean up the bolsters again. But I want to go ahead and get the handle to where it needs to be so that we can go ahead and profiling it. Yeah, whenever we get to this point right here, you can really start telling that it's a knife, but we had to go from, of course, this, which is nowhere near a knife. Technically, we had to go from this, which is nowhere near a knife, go from this, to then isolate everything, shift everything to get to this knife that we have right here, which is pretty cool. You know, a lot of people think that you need power hammers and presses and all of these tools to do this particular craft. Man, but I've used nothing but hammers, anvils, and tongs this entire time. It's not something that you have to have a ton of things to make stuff with forging. And we're doing a whole entire profile to include the handle, everything. Preferred method, quench. So I quench with, of course, I use my forge to heat it up. I quench in peanut oil for a lot of my 5160. Peanut oil doesn't have a bad smell. I heat it up to 120 degrees and quench it. But I also use Parks 50 and AAA whenever it's necessary. Of course, if you want to use the pinto sauce, if you listen to the Knives Templar podcast that I'm on, that right there, we have a guy named Otis Pinto on there. He quenches, and no joke, diesel. So his quenching that he uses for all his knives is diesel fuel. So let's go ahead and clean up this bolster area using our straight peen and the edge of our anvil. All I'm doing is trying to focus on getting a nice, clean, round transition. From the handle down into, you see how we have this just nice and round? Of course, we'll center up the edge and all that stuff, but that's what I'm focused on right now, is just a nice, even, round transition. Once we get it to where we kind of want it, like, see the spine here, where it just flows down into the spine. That's what we're looking for. Of course, it's not super even just yet because we need to clean up the handle profile. But that's good going into the next process that we're about to do. We're going to heat it up again. What I'm going to do right now, the heel of this is too far over that way. All I'm going to do is take it, put the blade on the anvil, and hammer on the side that's too high on the handle. So I'll put the blade on the anvil here along this side, and I'm going to hammer on this point right here, and it's going to shift the cutting edge over to be centered. Once I have that centered, then I'll go ahead and start profiling that handle. I'm making kitchen knives right now. This right here is more of like a drop point, kind of a camp knife or a hunter. Think about making blades out of railroad spikes. So railroad spikes are more of a novelty thing. So if you want to make knives out of it, just understand that it's going to be more of a novelty knife. It's not ever really going to hold an edge because even the high carbon railroad spikes don't have enough carbon in them to really hold an edge. Versus if you're doing like 5160 or a bunch of the other reclaimed steels that you can get right now. And a lot of 5160 is going to be spring steel like what I'm working with right now. But railroad spike knives, you can make them. They're really cool forging projects to get used to the forging process, but they'll never really hold an edge. But they're great to practice on. Let's see, let's go back a little bit. I'm happy that we've had this many people on here and that y'all been talking. Like, this is one of the best parts about doing the live streams versus just filming a video and putting it out there. I don't get to talk to people during it or explain a lot of the stuff, and this is fantastic. So thank y'all for actually participating in the comment section and actually being here as part of this. I really appreciate that. So again, put the blade on the anvil and then hammer on the actual handle. That's going to shift that cutting edge over. Now we are nice and centered on our cutting edge inside the handle. So now on this next step, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to take this arch this way out of it. So we're going to take and we're going to pull the handle this way, and we're going to have a nice arch going down the actual spine. Switch tongs. Well, we can go ahead and put it in the forge, and then I'll switch tongs. Let's go with, I'm going to put it handle in. As you can see again, right there where the handle kicks up this way, we don't want that. And another thing I'm going to tell you, like right now, the handle kicks up this way, and you see how this is really round right here? It's going to eliminate a lot of that. This is going to be more like a 90-degree angle once I shift this handle down. You'll see how much better of a profile we get whenever we do these next steps. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the anvil so y'all can actually see this. So we're going to end up putting the blade on this little area right here, where part of it's going to be up here, part of it's going to be down here. We're going to hammer on it, and we're going to arch. So right now it's shaped kind of like this. We're going to put an arch into it like that, and then we're going to end up cleaning it up and even it up. We want to make sure that we get a decent amount of heat into the spine of the knife. If the spine is too cold whenever we actually do this step, you can risk putting tears in the actual spine of the blade. Because what will happen is the metal will shear as you start flexing it like that. So you want to get enough heat in there so that it can flex easy and be relaxed. If it's too cold, you'll actually start putting shears or little cracks in there, and when you quench it, you'll snap your blade. So again, because you brought it up, this is the video we released today for the Viking Challenge. We forged this in one of the live streams. So this is one that I did for a YouTube video that released today. The zebra bone handle forged profile, forged fullers, wrought iron, guard, sax profile. But that's what we made. Look at that handle on there. So I had that video released today. Forged out of 5160. We have the Rivers Experienced etched into it. The design etched into that side. Absolutely awesome. Two-handed or one-handed with the zebra bone handle. So that one again was forged in a live stream. I think we did that one about a month ago. So you can actually watch how that whole entire thing was forged, or you can watch the YouTube video that released today. So let's go ahead and straighten out this spine. Brought it down quite a bit now. Still need to heat it up, do that one more time. But again, we were hooked this way, but now we have it running in line. We just need to bring it down just a little bit more. Then we'll have a better knife profile. But right now, we actually have a knife profile. It is in the profile of a knife, and I could easily grind this thing and call it done, but you know, I want to clean it up, make it look awesome. Let's see here. Ever make any machetes? I have made machetes. So the groove in the blade, I used a fullery tool like this right here. It's called a guillotine. So the blade goes in there, and that puts that fuller in it. This sits inside the hardy hole. Put the blade in there, and you just hammer and run the blade through it. Keep it nice and even. I did across. Thank you all. Awesome thing. Yep. Yeah, I saw yours, Mule. Yeah, cold forge is, you got to be careful with those. These hammers am I using? I am using 2 Bastards hammers for all of this. These guys right here. If you can actually see the maker's mark on there, right there. 2 Bastards. Awesome people, Frank and Nita. They are the 2 Bastards, husband and wife. They're absolutely awesome. They've been doing it for 6 years, so they will actually tell you what type of hammer. If you can tell them what type of hammers you have, they'll suggest what hammers to get from that point. But you can get hammers that they make, or you can get restorations. You can get itty bitty, little bitty ball peen hammers. You can get all kinds of stuff. So let's continue to forge this down. Drop that handle down just a little bit more. Okay. I'm going to grab it from the handle. see the profile we have right now? We still have a hump right here. I'm going to take that hump out of it, and I'm going to even this little area out that's right here in that process. Then we'll have a nice profile to the spine. Now, could I easily grind this section out? Sure. I could wait until after I get done doing this and grind it out, but why not go ahead and forge it right now? Your ambassador should give you one of them. What's up from Poland? How you doing? What time is it in Poland right now? Haven't made a cut list. I have not made a cut list yet, but I plan on it. And I learned this by doing a lot of it. Now, the cool thing about what I get to do is I forge and film myself. So imagine if you could watch all game day footage of you trying to do a thing. So I forge and I edit all of the videos. So I get to see whenever I make mistakes. I get to see whenever I'm doing something right. And I get to go, okay, cool, keep doing the right thing, but change the thing that you screwed up on. I get to watch myself in hours and hours and hours of footage. Starting to take that profile and really clean it up, get it where we want it. Back into the heat. Well, pretty much where we need it to be. So now I'm going to do one last heat where I'm focusing on the blade, finalizing that, and then I'll go ahead, finish up the handle, and we'll be done. 12, built your own forge, which is absolutely awesome. No, I do gun stuff as well. So I don't just do bladesmithing. I do a lot of everything. I wish YouTube was cool with me actually building firearms on here, but they're real weird about that. So I can't do that. I had filmed a couple of videos and put them out, and then they instantly started demonetizing people, and I was like, man, dang. So I had to take those videos down. But I was working on an AR that I was working on. But yeah, I do a lot of different things with everything, but you can only do so much on YouTube before they start telling you. I'll let this heat up just a little bit more, because I'm just doing cleanup phase on the blade. I don't need it to be super hot. I just need to have just enough heat into it to do what we're doing. Yeah, they get kind of crazy about a lot of things. Okay, let's finish cleaning up this blade. Right now I'm just focusing on planishing, cleaning up edges, thicknesses, things like that. Okay, our blade is good, transitions are good, everything's even. I'm going to go ahead and focus on the handle now. Our blade is centered in our handle. So now we just need to clean it up. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be finishing the tapers on the handle and then work on that I-beam profile that I was talking about as we do that. What do y'all say? What's your favorite kind of knife? A drop point camp knife. I have not done a balisong. I'll tell you, a drop camp knife is one of my favorites, but a good big buoy, you know, that right there is probably one of my favorite profiles that I do. That is absolutely epic and awesome. But yeah, either that or I would say doing a camp knife, something like that. I do a lot of those. Love camp knives. Of course, the big sacks that I just got done doing, love that. I like cool profiles and blades. Now I'll tell you, there's another one. This is one that a lot of people don't know what it is. A lot of people have never heard of a Quaken. But this right here, this is called a Quaken. It'll have more of a kind of like a mini katana style handle. But this one has a forged bevel going towards the spine, a bevel going towards the cutting edge, and it's curved. But having that ridge run all the way down it like a dagger, but doing that with a curved blade is a pain in the butt. Making it even on both sides. This is one of my favorite profiles here. But that is easily one of my favorites. Being able to do that and accomplish that with just hammer and anvil, having a nice, perfectly even cutting edge and spine all the way down. Doing those are a challenge to myself. Those are ones that I really pushed myself to really do better things. And doing a lot of these like forged to finish knives, they take a lot of work and figuring things out and problem solving to make everything even as we go. Right now I want to get the area that would be the bolsters even on both sides of the knife. Everything's centered. Okay, our cutting edge is centered in the handle now. Our spine is centered in the handle now. So now what I need to do is create that I-beam profile can see it's kind of started a little bit. You can see how there's kind of like a C on this other side here. There's also one on this side over here. We're going to create an I-beam effect on the top and the bottom here. And that's going to give us a comfortable handle, just like what's going on with this one right here. You can see how there's a swell on, there we go, both sides here, that C and the one on this side. So basically the handle flares and rounds on the top and the bottom so that you have a nice comfortable grip. That's what we're going to create with this right here. We're going to end up with a nice comfortable grip that's forged in as opposed to something that was stalker moved in. Yeah, Tontos are absolutely awesome. Is it profitable? Yes, it is. I mean, I sold one of the knives that I made a couple of weeks ago for almost $1,000. So as you don't sell, you know, you're not just selling $1,000 knives left and right, but you know, whenever you can sell ones like that, it's just absolutely awesome. This is one of those things where if you're going to do it full time, you probably need to have another version or another source of income. I do this and life insurance, so they kind of both, I guess, go kind of hand in hand, but it's kind of interesting whenever I hand out my cards. I'm either handing out a bladesmith card or a life insurance card. So again, we're going to come in here, and we're just going to forge on the belly and the spine, working like this side to side as we do this. Go back in the heat. We're starting to actually create that I-beam look. Get it warmed back up a little bit. And again, all we're doing is we're just rotating it so that we can hammer all the way around it on the sides and start flaring. Instead of it just being an I-beam like this, we're starting to round these edges so that it's almost like a comfort fit for a ring. Started this endeavor, my goal would be to create a correct Crusader sword. Oh yeah. Yeah, Crusader swords are awesome. I'm really excited about going down and doing this Renaissance Fair thing where I'm going to be forging at the Dragon Forge Experience in Texas. If you haven't had a chance to look that up, look up the Dragon Forge Experience. All the forges like this, they're the mouths of dragons. So they have these huge like dragon sculptures, and the mouths are the actual forge. So whenever you're putting the steel back in the forge, you're putting it into the mouth of this huge dragon. And I'll be forging there for the end of October, all of November, beginning of December. It's going to be absolutely awesome. I'll be live streaming that whenever we get to that point too. So you'll actually get to see me live stream during that. It'll be 10 hours a day of just for forging, which is going to be really cool. And that is, I'll end up posting links for it and all that stuff. I don't know where exactly it's at. I'm pretty sure it's just north of Houston, Texas. but it's a pretty big Renaissance fair. If you look up the Dragon Forge Experience Texas, it'll actually tell you where it's at. Start to get there. See here. Let me try and get the better light here. So you can see where it's flared here around the edge there, and where the center is narrow, but it flares out. So that is getting to where we're pretty good. We just need to make sure we keep everything centered as we do it. Right now we have a slight twist, so what I'm going to do, it's slight twists this way, so I'm going to shift it that way, and this next heat by forging on this corner and shifting it over this way. And then we will have ourselves a fully forged knife. Now what I typically do that cleans a lot of this stuff up after the fact, the next part, like I'm going to get everything even to where it's at, but whenever I fine tune things, it typically takes about another, like if I wanted to make this super, super, super pretty looking, I would take another couple of hours, and I would take one of my ball, this guy right here, and I'd go in, and whenever, without it being hot, I sit there and I do a slight ball peen texture all the way around it, and I clean everything up. But it takes an extra hour and a half of just me working with the ball peen, smoothing everything, cleaning everything, and I do a lot of that without it being hot. One of these days I'll film that aspect of it, but I get this to where it's about 90% done, and then I do a lot of that finish work at the very end. So how much would this knife be? What's up? I don't know exactly how to say your name, but hi, how are you doing? Am I a blacksmith? I would consider myself more of a bladesmith, and price-wise on these, it really just depends on if I decide to sell them. A lot of the more custom ones that I do, I'll either trade them for collaboration builds or for sponsors and different things like that. But a lot of my, the tongs, no, I purchased them from people who make tongs a lot better than I could. What's up from New Mexico? How you doing? So whenever it comes to like pricing and stuff like that, a lot of the knives that I make on the channel, I put them on my website and I show them off on that. I still don't know exactly how YouTube is with me telling people the prices of the knives. If I tell somebody the price of a knife, I could get demonetized and shut down tomorrow. You never know. But if you want to go look at my website, theriversexperience.com, I have all my knives listed on there. So we're going to shift this over real quick. clean that up. Make sure everything is still centered. We are looking real good on this. We'll switch to the ball peen. This lets me get everything nice and planished. Now you don't do this step with a lot of heat in the blade. You want it to be nice and, cooled down. All we're doing is smoothing, we're not moving material. All right, let me switch tongs, show you what we're working with. See if we need to clean anything up. I think we're looking good. So this is where we're at right now. So we have our full knife profile. Got our handle profile with that I-beam thing that I was talking about. Right there to where it flares out. We have a nice radius here on the top and the bottom. Nice handle profile with a slight little swell towards here. I'm surprised the mods are just like letting that hang out there. But yeah. Got everything cleaned up. There we go. So the point behind the I-beam handle is, for one, it takes some of the weight out of it. So you want to take some of that weight out of the handle so that it's, for one, not super thick, because that would be too much weight in this section. But if we just tapered it back, then it wouldn't be that comfortable to hold. What we were able to do is flare it to where we have a pretty even thickness throughout the handle here, while making it thin in the center to save weight. You can see here, we've got a nice straight profile all the way through to the tip there. It's not curved like a banana. We have a nice thin cutting edge. But a lot of that is just us focusing on getting everything nice and clean and even. And then our bevels are nice and flat. There we go. Lost y'all for about 5 seconds. But we don't have a bunch of large hammer marks. Now the cool thing is, I'll still be cleaning this up tomorrow, and I'll post a picture of it in the comment, like the YouTube comments, or whatever that thing is called. But yeah, I'll have everything cleaned up. I'm still going to end up doing a little bit more work tomorrow on this. When it's cold, I'm going to do some cold forging on it and just clean everything up a little bit, get the profile cleaned up a little bit more, and then I'll post a picture of it. Nope, so no additional handle material. That handle is forged in. So how's the balance on your full tangs built like? So almost all of them, my balance is made to where you can put your finger at the ricasso or the finger choil, and it will be perfectly balanced throughout the whole entire blade and handle. So weight balance is always built like that. The only ones that are built slightly different than that, and I'm going to put this into the forge and let it start annealing. We do that after the forging steps. We'll let that come to temp a little bit, and then I'm going to close off the forge. But the only things that tend to be weighted a little bit different are things like my swords, and they're typically going to be weighted a little bit more towards the blade side. Like that right there is more blade side. We're about 2.5 inches in front of the guard where my finger is. For that, that's going to be the weight balance for something like a sword that needs to be forward heavy. So whenever you're doing this, it's going to be a little bit more forward heavy, so that whenever you are cutting through something, it actually pulls your hand through it. But I bring the weight far enough back to where you can come in and pull back. In, pull back. And that is with a 1/4 inch thick spine. But a lot of it is so that whenever you are cutting through something, it will actually let you go through it, so be able to pull back and stop yourself. You'll see a lot of the Forged in Fire stuff where they talk about how the weight is on the knives, where they feel like they have to cut through and they have to really pull it back to get the rebound back on it. Whenever you're cutting through, you want to be able to swing and stop and pull back. Unless you're using some crazy sword with 2 hands, you want to be able to evenly balance it, come through, and be able to do everything that you're going to do with it balanced right. And a lot of mine have that whenever I'm thinking through how I'm going to balance it. So it needs to be that thought process built into your blades if you're going to do this. And I do that with a lot of mine. So let's go ahead, shut this off, close the forge off. The whole point behind that is it lets the blade come up to temperature and anneal it so that you can actually have a nice manageable piece of steel that is nice and in its most normalized state whenever you start messing with it the next time. Like the dark look of the zero bone. Yeah, me too. I found this piece of bone at one of the blade shows, and I was just like, that's the piece. That is the absolute piece that needs to go on this. And originally, I was going to cut it about right here and use a piece of wood to the front so that I can make it all nice and even. But then I was like, man, I have to keep as much of that bone on there as possible. And the fact that it was able to work and be super even and have that beautiful end piece on there, like that was just meant to be on this particular build. Sharpening method, I use a 2x72 with a like 220 grit, 240 grit belt to do the initial. And then I use a 600 grit sharpening belt on my 1x30 and a 800 grit belt on my 1x30 and then a leather strapping belt on my 1x30. Those belts are supplied by Pro Sharpening Supply. You can get 1x30 sharpening belts through them. I use that to sharpen all of these things. And they are absolutely ridiculously sharp. So like, let's do this real quick. Just toss the tongs and the hammer down. A little paper towel tube. Little paper towel slice on that thing. I'm glad I didn't cut the bone. Yep, same here. Annealing, so cooling. Yes. So with the annealing process, you want to be able to cool it slower. So you can either cool it inside your forge or in vermiculite. But our goal is to get the blade up to about 1600 degrees, let it cool slowly so that the steel can get into its most relaxed state. You got to think about this. I took a coil spring that had been abused its entire life, being a coil on a truck, a heavy duty truck, and then I forged it into a flat bar like this, which was a ton of abuse. And then I forged that into a full knife, which is even more abuse. So we need to take it and put it back into a relaxed state, which is why we do the annealing process to put it back into that point. If you have any influence on what the options are for the next challenge. Shoot, influence on it? I want to do the post-apocalyptic challenge, man. I want to use the reclaimed, like all reclaimed materials, because here's the deal. When it comes to these challenges, I love to think outside the box on a lot of the stuff that I do. I want to do something that works within the challenge, but is super unique. There's a lot of people in the challenge that make beautiful Damascus blades that are super precise, and they're using milling machines and all of these different things. I want to force those guys to make something. What's up from Brazil? I want to force those guys to make something that forces them to think outside the box and use materials that force them to just get down and dirty and just, again, force them to think outside the box and not be so stuck in this machinist mindset. A lot of them create awesome things. They have machinist brains and they can think through a lot of stuff and they make things look super pretty. But sometimes, man, you just want something that just looks badass and looks like you would have picked it up off the ground and chopped some zombies up with it. That's what I want to make. You know what I mean? And I want to take stuff from my shop and make something really cool out of it. Instead of taking a whole bunch of knife steel, turning it into a knife. I want to take some cool random stuff that was never meant to be a knife, turn it into a knife, and have some fun with it. That's my thing. All right, Mark, I'll talk to you later. So I feel like we were able to do a lot with this, and the cool thing is I'm going to post a picture of it after it's all cleaned up tomorrow. I'm going to get everything smoothed out, cleaned up, get the profile cleaned up a little bit on the 2x72, and then I'll take pictures of it after I get the forge scale off of it, and I'll go ahead and show y'all what it looks like. I don't have a power hammer. Well, the funny thing is I do have a power hammer. I just choose to hand forge as much stuff as possible. So I do have a power hammer. This has a 30-pound head on it and all that. So I do have that. But I really enjoy the process of forging by hand. And even though I have that, that makes it easier whenever I'm doing production knives or if I'm doing Damascus or something like that. But for a lot of these things where I'm forging them and I'm just having fun doing the profiles and forging something that I've never forged before, I want to do it by hand. I want to really get in there and have to get after it. What's up, Ben? How you doing? Welcome back. You do realize a lot of us fancy knife guys started nothing, thinking outside the box. Oh yeah, absolutely. No, and I'm not saying that they don't think outside the box. It's just sometimes whenever they're forced to do like a fantasy challenge, they sit there and they're like, how do I make my super clean work look fantastical? And it absolutely throws them for a loop. And they are trying to think of, how do I make something that's supposed to look down and dirty look really, 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 really clean? And you got a lot of people who are used to making like chef's knives who've got to make a big old chopper, and they're having to think through the whole entire process. And I just love pushing them outside their comfort zone. Me, I like doing everything, and I love doing clean work that are super hand sanded and polished and have the crispest plunge lines and transition lines as possible. But I also like doing some of the brute to forge kind of different crazy stuff. You know, two-handed choppers that are like 3.5 feet long. Love that. Love the Fallout look with my stuff. Heck yeah. I don't think I'm gonna bend it. With another rock, I'm down. I love that. I love that thought process. But anyone that ever worked with festival and SCA circuit doesn't suffer from any sort of grit. That's true. And here's the thing. It's not even that they really suffer from a creative block or anything like that. It's just Damascus can carry can carry people a further distance than having to do things in monosteel. So you can have a blade profile or a knife build that is like kind of okay looking, okay profile, okay handle profile, nothing really outside of the box. But then you have this crazy like explosion Damascus, and it's like, dang, that looks absolutely epic. But really, they just took a standard blade profile and just used really cool Damascus to carry it to like the next level. Now, whenever that changes is whenever you have people who win a lot of the shows who do like crazy Damascus patterns, and then they do like a crazy frame handle that has like Turkish twist, like a Turkish twist frame all the way around it, that has like a Turkish twist guard on a buoy, that has like mammoth tusk handles with pins that are hand domed onto it, not like just regular pins that are just run through and glued, but actually domed over, and they domed them by hand, that has scroll work with gold inlays and silver inlays. Man, you gotta. So I'm gonna tell you something. Icarus Forge. If you get a chance, go onto Instagram and type in Icarus Forge. Okay. The dagger that he's working on right now is one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. And that's saying a lot. Like Icarus Forge on Instagram, look up the build that he's working on right now, and you will see some crazy stuff. And I just, very few people would ignore the fittings if they're dropping mosaic into a build. Yep. But some of them, man, you do those crazy fittings with mosaic Damascus and it's epic. Post-apocalyptic would be similar methods of production. Yep, I agree. 2 to 3 foot long choppers, Diablo style blades. So I live in a place called Wichita Falls, Texas. It is at North Texas by Oklahoma. And you know, my thing is, it's not so much knocking the people who do really clean work whenever I say what I was saying. I like for them to get pushed out of their comfort zone and and think outside of the box with handle profiles. Oh, you're in Fairfield? That's cool. That's actually not too far. That's cool. Um, and But yeah, it's not so much. Let's see here. I got a dip. Man, it was awesome having you here. Uh, it's one of those things where I like seeing them get pushed out of the comfort zones where they make very similar handles for every single knife that they do. They make very similar profiles for blades every single knife that they do. I like for them to step out and have to do like a pistol grip on their handle or use different materials or have to think through cool and unique blade profiles. Every single knife on the planet has been made 4 times over. Everybody's done everything. You're almost never going to create something new that no one else has had any influence on. But having people who kind of have one lane that they stay into and branch out into something that is not what they typically do, I like that aspect of knife making. You know what I mean? I know, dude. I plan on doing some folding knives. I cannot wait. Hold up in Paris. I think most guys outside of their zones. Hey, yeah, well, folding knives are hard. I plan on doing some of the folding knives. I'm going to start off with some friction folders, get into that whole thing because you can do a lot of friction folders with the tools that I have. And then whenever I get my mini mill, I'll probably go into making some more intricate folders. So still working on the shop and getting everything how I need it to be. I'm going to be working on the grinding room here soon, getting that finished out. Just jump right into slip joints. I might have to do something like that. Well, hey, after this, send me a message. So if you want, you can either message me on Facebook or Instagram. Again, on Instagram, it's just the Rivers Experience or just the Rivers Experience. Message me on Instagram, and we'll get something figured out. I sure can make katanas. Katanas are awesome. I've got a Wakizashi that I'm working on right now back here, and I've got a Quaken that I'm working on. I'm from Wichita Falls, Texas. Yeah, and what we did today was we forged some 5160 round bar that was a coil spring off of a big truck into a fully integral knife tonight. Kind of like this one right here, where we took and forged the whole entire profile into the knife. Let's see here. They suggest Frontier Man. I probably will suggest that. Well, Charles, it was awesome having you here. Again, we did this primarily with my Two Bastards hammers. All these live streams are sponsored by Two Bastards, Smithy and Supplies, Frank and Nita. They're the Two Bastards. They do a lot of it. They're the people who, I'm wearing their hat right now. But they make everything. Not just hammers. They also do swage blocks. They do restorations on old hammers and vintage hammers. They sell little bitty tiny hammers all the way up to, you want a ridiculous hammer, you get yourself a 5.5 pound cross peen. You want to swing a big hammer? Look at that hammer compared to the size of my anvil. 5.5 pound. It's just funny because this is a standard ball peen. Standard ball peen. That thing right there is just massive. All right. The Raiders of Poland. Yesterday, you can 10 knives and sword grinding. Nice to see your channel. Well, thanks, James. It is a nice hammer. Again, Two Bastards made that one for me as well for whenever I'm doing crazier, bigger projects, being able to work with it. A lot of the hammers that I use are between 3.5 to 5 pounds. Most of the ones that I use, I don't typically use ones that are lighter than that. So if you're typing it in on Instagram, it is the_Rivers_experience. So the_Rivers_experience. It doesn't have the little apostrophe like my channel. And yeah, I was at Belleville, the Texas Select show. Thank you. I love my shop. This is just one of them. So the shop that I'm in right now is this shop. It's just one of them. It's got my grinders and different tools like that, all the way around to the other anvil, the power hammer. And then I've got a 12x12 shop on this side right here that is actually going to have the grinding room and all of that stuff in it, and my leather working area. Move y'all back up so I don't have to crop as much. And so we have that. Shane Staten. I feel like we have. Were you at the Texas Select Show as well? But yeah, this shop works out real well, and I built this one on the actual channel. It was originally an 11x11 shop that had my forge and anvil and all that stuff in it. I leveled that, broke up the concrete, had a new slab poured, and then I built this myself, and it works out amazingly. I'm about to start working on getting the grinding room finished, and then I'll be adding on another shop this big to the other side of my 12x12. Oh, so you were inside? So I was at N1. I was the first table when you walked out to the outdoor area. I was the first table that you saw before you went to all the other tables. I've put a lot of money into this shop. I think the build on this particular shop cost me about $7,000. And I did all the labor on it. Other than the concrete floor, having the concrete pad poured to be thick enough to be able to use the power hammer in here, that cost a little bit of money. That was probably the biggest cost of the whole entire thing, was the concrete pad. And yeah, shops will eat all the money. I've got more stuff to do. I've got an 8-foot pad on the outside that's 8 foot by 16 foot. I'm going to be taking that and covering it and moving the forge and anvils out to that section, so that whenever I'm teaching classes here, it's a lot easier to work around everything, and it'll be cool. So I had a big pad poured, so 16 foot this way by like 28 foot long. Over the last decade, and we're still building. That's true, man. It does. It never ends, man. It never ends. Okay, I think, speaking of things ending, I think I'm going to end this here, and let's go ahead and call it done. I'm going to go inside and grab a snack, grab something to drink, and hang out. Guys, thank y'all for coming here. Thank y'all for participating in the live stream, and and hanging out. Mom, it was awesome having you here. Janet Jackson is actually my mom, by the way. It's not the Janet Jackson you're thinking of, but yeah, her name is Janet Jackson. But guys, thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for participating in the comment section. Thank y'all for watching the live stream. I do this every Saturday at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. So next Saturday we'll be forging something different. It's gonna be fun. Let's go ahead, end it here, guys, gals. Thank y'all for being here. Y'all have an amazing week, and I'll catch y'all next time.